The day my grandmother was buried, my brother was already doing the math. I remember standing at the graveside in that gray November cold that only southwestern Ontario knows how to deliver, the kind that gets into your coat and stays there. My grandmother, Nana Rose, had lived 81 years in the same house in Kitchener. She grew tomatoes in the backyard every summer. She kept her financial records in a green binder she stored under the bathroom sink. She didn't trust banks entirely, and she trusted lawyers even less, which is why she'd spent the last 3 years of her life making absolutely sure that everything she owned went exactly where she wanted it to go. To me, not because I was her favorite, though I'd like to think I was, but because I was the one who drove her to chemotherapy every second Tuesday. Because I was the one who called her every Sunday morning and actually stayed on the phone for an hour. Because I was the one sitting beside her in the hospital room at 2 a.m. when she squeezed my hand and said, "Claire, don't let them take the house." I promised her I wouldn't. What I didn't tell her was that by then, I'd already made sure they couldn't. My name is Claire. I'm 31 years old. I work as a forensic accountant for a mid-sized firm in Waterloo, the kind of job that sounds boring at dinner parties until someone realizes what it actually means. It means I find money that people are trying to hide. It means I know exactly how financial fraud works, from the inside out, in granular detail. It means that when my older brother started making certain phone calls in the months before Nana Rose passed, calls I wasn't supposed to know about, I understood immediately what he was building toward. And I had time to build something first. Let me tell you about my brother. His name is Derek. He's 36, and he has always been the one our parents talked about at Christmas. The one who got the hockey scholarship, the one who married first, the one who gave them grandchildren first. I am 4 years younger, and I spent most of my childhood being told I was so responsible, so dependable, which is the family way of saying you're useful without being celebrated. Derek got the praise. I got the tasks. Derek got the stories told about him. I got the groceries picked up, the appointments kept, the calls returned. I'm not bitter about it. I genuinely am not. I made my peace with that dynamic a long time ago, somewhere around the age of 23, when I realized that being the dependable one meant I had skills the celebrated one didn't. I could manage things. I could plan ahead. I could keep my mouth shut and work quietly and wait. Nana Rose knew who showed up for her, and when she updated her will 2 years before she died, she left me the house on Blenheim Road, a 3-bedroom post-war bungalow that, in the current Kitchener market, was worth somewhere north of $600,000, along with the contents of her investment account, which sat at around $240,000. She left Derek a meaningful sum too, $80,000 in a separate account she'd held at a different institution, because Nana Rose was fair-minded even when she was deliberate. Derek found out about the will about 6 months before she passed. I don't know exactly how. I think he overheard something at one of her medical appointments. He showed up exactly twice in those final 8 months. Both times when I happened to be there, both times with flowers and that loud, warm voice that our parents always loved. I think one of those times he managed to get a few minutes alone with her, and I think she told him more than she should have. Because after that visit, Derek started calling the estate lawyer's office. I only know this because the estate lawyer, a woman named Patricia, who I'd been working with for nearly a year by that point, called me herself to let me know. "Your brother has been making inquiries," Patricia told me, in that careful, measured way that lawyers use when they're telling you something alarming without wanting to alarm you. "He's asked for copies of documentation. He's asked about the process for contesting a will on the grounds of undue influence." I was sitting in my car in the parking lot of a Sobeys when she told me this. I remember staring at a shopping cart that someone had left at an angle between 2 parking spots. "What did you tell him?" I asked. "That he would need to speak to his own counsel," she said. "But Claire, I think you should be prepared." I thanked her. I sat in the car for a while. Then I went inside and bought pasta and a jar of sauce and drove home and made dinner. And while the water was boiling, I opened my laptop and started thinking through everything Derek would need to do to actually make a challenge stick. The answer was quite a lot. And he couldn't do most of it legitimately, which meant he was probably going to try to do it another way. After Nana Rose passed in February, the will went through probate. This is standard in Ontario. The estate goes through the Superior Court of Justice. The will is validated, and then the executor, which was Patricia, begins the process of distributing assets. It takes time. It involves paperwork. And during that window, certain things are technically in motion, but not yet fully transferred. Derek knew this. I could tell he knew it from the way he started being careful around me, friendlier than usual, checking in more, asking how I was holding up. My brother is not a subtle man. He operates through warmth and momentum. the same way he always has. And when he turned that warmth on deliberately, I could feel the mechanics of it like a hand reaching into my pocket. He called me in early March, about 3 weeks after the funeral. "Hey," he said, "I was thinking maybe we should get together. Just the two of us. Coffee or something. I know things have been a lot." "Sure," I said, "that would be nice." We met at a Tim Hortons near my apartment, his suggestion. He bought my coffee without asking, which he never does, and he sat across from me and did the thing with his face that means he's about to say something he's rehearsed. "I've been thinking about Nana's place," he said. "And look, I know what the will says, but I also think she wasn't entirely herself at the end, you know? She was on a lot of medication. I'm worried that maybe decisions got made when she wasn't in the best position to make them." I wrapped both hands around my coffee cup. "What are you saying, Derek?" "I'm just saying maybe we should talk about this as a family before everything gets finalized. Maybe there's a way to handle it that makes sense for everyone." What he was actually saying was, "I want more than what I was given, and I'm hoping you'll either agree to renegotiate or give me enough time to find another angle." I looked at him for a moment. "Nana knew what she was doing," I said. "She was sharp until the end. You know that." He smiled the smile that gets him out of things. I know. I just think family should come first, right? We're all we've got." I nodded. I drove home. And that night, I called Patricia and told her I thought we needed to move faster. What I haven't mentioned yet is the second thing I'd been doing quietly for the previous 4 months, alongside my regular work. Nana Rose's investment account, the $240,000, was held at a brokerage in her name. As sole beneficiary, I would receive those funds once the estate was settled. But there's a window between death and settlement, during which an account can be vulnerable if someone has access to the right information. Login credentials, security questions, account numbers. I knew Derek had visited Nana Rose alone at least once in her final months. I knew she kept a small notebook in her nightstand with passwords written in pencil. I'd seen it myself, and I had no way of knowing whether Derek had seen it too. So I did 2 things. First, I called the brokerage and had a note placed on the account, flagging it for manual verification on any transfer request. I explained that there was a potential estate dispute and that I was concerned about unauthorized access. They took it seriously. There's a process for this, and it involves a verbal passphrase that only I would know, that had to be confirmed by phone before any movement of funds could be processed. Second, and this is the part that came from years of doing what I do for a living, I set up a monitoring alert. Any login attempt on that account outside of business hours, any attempted transfer request, any change to contact information, I would receive an email and a text message within minutes. I was ready. The alert came on a Thursday evening in late March at 7:14 p.m. Someone had attempted to access the account using Nana Rose's credentials. The attempt had failed because the account was flagged. A transfer request of $210,000 had been submitted and automatically held pending manual verification. I read the notification 3 times. My hands were steady. I'd known this was coming. I'd built the system because I knew it was coming. And still, there was something in my chest that felt like a door closing forever. I called Patricia. Then I called the non-emergency line for the Waterloo Regional Police Service and asked to speak with someone in their financial crimes unit. Then I sat down on my couch and thought about the conversation I needed to have with my brother. Because here is the thing about fraud, and this is what I know from my job. In a way that most people don't, the attempt itself is often not enough. You want the whole picture. You want to understand who else is involved, what documentation was forged, whether there are other angles being worked simultaneously. A partial case is a weak case. I needed Derek to commit more fully before I let the net close. So I called him the next morning. "Hey," I said, "I was thinking about what you said, about family coming first." There was a pause. "Yeah? Maybe you're right. Maybe we should talk this through properly. All of us together. Why don't you come for dinner on Saturday? Bring Nicole and the kids." Another pause, shorter this time. "Yeah," he said, and I could hear the recalibration happening in real time. "Yeah, that sounds good, Claire. That really sounds good." He showed up at 6 o'clock with his wife Nicole and their 2 kids, and a bottle of Ontario Red that he handed to me at the door with both hands, like an offering. Nicole had always been fine with me. She's not a bad person. But she has spent 15 years married to Derek, and she's learned to follow his lead in situations where following costs less than questioning. She kissed my cheek and complimented my apartment and helped me set the table and didn't ask any difficult questions. My brother, meanwhile, was performing warmth so vigorously I could almost see the effort. We ate. We talked about the kids' hockey. We talked about spring coming late this year. We talked about the house in Kitchener, how much work it would need, whether I planned to sell or keep it, what the market was doing. Derek said he had a friend in real estate who could help me get a good price if I decided to list. He said it in the tone of someone doing me a favor. After dinner, Nicole took the kids to the living room. Derek helped me clear the table. And then, while we were standing in the kitchen with the plates stacked between us, he said it. I talked to someone, he said. A lawyer. He thinks there are real grounds to challenge Claire. He thinks the timeline of how the will was updated, the proximity to her diagnosis, he thinks that's something. I set down the glass I was holding. Derek, I don't want to fight. I really don't. But I have to protect my family too. And I think if you just agree to split things more evenly, we could avoid the whole thing going to court. It would drag on for years. It would cost both of us. He was watching my face. He was waiting for fear or guilt or both. I looked at him for a long moment. Can I show you something? I said. I went to the kitchen table and opened my laptop. I turned it so he could see the screen. It was the monitoring report from the brokerage. Login attempt, Thursday, 7:14 p.m. Transfer request, $210,000, automatically held. IP address, logged. Device fingerprint recorded. Derek's face did something I had never seen it do before. It went absolutely still. I've been a forensic accountant for 8 years, I said. I know how these things work. I set up alerts the month after Nana passed because I knew this was a possibility. The brokerage has a full record. The attempted transfer is documented. The IP address has already been cross-referenced. He opened his mouth. Don't, I said. He closed it. Here's what happens now, I said. Patricia has already been notified. The Financial Crimes Unit at Waterloo Regional has already been notified. I have documentation of the attempt, and I have documentation of every conversation we've had since March that suggests this was premeditated. You are going to go home tonight, and you are going to call a criminal defense lawyer, not an estate lawyer, a criminal defense lawyer, and you are going to be honest with them about exactly what you did. Nicole appeared in the kitchen doorway. She looked between us, and something shifted in her face. Derek, she said. He didn't answer her. He was still looking at me. The house is mine, I said. Nana's investment account is mine. The will is valid, and it's going to stand. What happens to you from here depends on choices you make in the next 48 hours. He left without the wine bottle. I stood in my kitchen for a while after they were gone. The plates were still on the counter. The kids had left a crayon on the floor by the couch, and I picked it up and held it for a long time without really knowing why. I want to tell you that it felt like winning, and in some ways it did. But there is a particular grief that comes from watching someone you grew up with choose the version of themselves you always hoped they wouldn't become. Derek and I used to build things together out of cardboard boxes when we were small. He used to let me have the corner piece of his birthday cake because he knew I liked the frosting. There was a version of him that existed before all of this, and I kept catching glimpses of it in the wrong moments, in the way he'd handed me the wine bottle with both hands, in the way he'd said we're all we've got over terrible Tim Hortons coffee. We were all we had, and he had tried to steal $210,000 from a dead woman's account. Both things were true at the same time, and neither one canceled the other out. Derek was formally charged 5 weeks later. The charge was criminal fraud under Section 380 of the Criminal Code of Canada, with an additional charge of unauthorized use of computer under Section 342.1. His lawyer negotiated. There were things I won't know the full details of for some time yet. What I do know is that the estate was fully settled in May. The house on Blenheim Road is mine. The investment account was transferred to me in full. Derek's $80,000 from Nana's separate account, the money she'd set aside for him specifically, because she was fair even when she was deliberate, has been held pending the outcome of his case. Patricia called me after everything was finalized. Your grandmother would be pleased, she said. I said I hope so. The tomato plants on Nana Rose's back porch need replacing, I checked last weekend, and most of them didn't make it through the winter. I'm going to put new ones in when the frost clears, which in Ontario means probably late May if you're being realistic. I'm going to do it the way she showed me. Deep in the soil, the lower leaves stripped off, the stem buried almost to the top so the roots grow strong all the way down. She taught me that the thing that makes a tomato plant survive isn't how tall it grows. It's how much of itself it's willing to put underground, quietly, where no one can see it. I keep thinking about that. The house still smells like her in certain rooms, early in the morning, when the heat comes on and the air moves. I stand in the hallway sometimes and just let it be there for a minute. Then I go make coffee, and I get to work.